Okay, so I have ChatGPT and I'm gonna ask it, please provide me with the top 3 most asked dog training questions. I'm very curious about this because I've done this a few times and I get different questions each time. So I'm very hopeful that it's gonna be something good, something helpful, and then we can go at it one at a time. Okay, there we go. So it's actually giving me the answers too. But I have the 3 questions here. So how do I stop my dog from barking excessively? How can I potty train my puppy? What is the best way to stop my dog from pulling on the leash? So those are 3 very common concerns. And there's quite a few ways to tackle all of them. But really with these questions, except maybe for the potty training question, the other 2 are a bit more behavioral, so we want to look into that a little bit more. Obviously there's no context here, but each dog and each family, each relationship with their pet parent is different, so I really want to look into those 2 when it comes to barking excessively and pulling on the leash, to really then have a good idea of where we want to start in terms of tackling those 2 behaviors. But if we start with barking, it depends if the barking is happening at home, if the barking is happening on walks, both, inside the car. It really depends. Barking can also mean a lot of different things. Barking, sometimes it's just another way of a dog that a dog can express their excitement, their joy even. So barking, just like shouting, screaming, sometimes it's not a bad thing, but it's definitely a way that dogs look to or use to communicate. So I definitely want to figure out what the dog is communicating. But if I was to take one example that I think is pretty common, for example, a dog that barks inside the house to the doorbell, for example, that is quite a common scenario. And what we want to do there is replace the barking with a different behavior. So whether the dog is barking out of boredom, out of frustration, or excitement, anxiety, fear, even, if we provide a dog with something else to do instead when that's happening, before it happens, after it happens, then the dog is likely to then learn and understand, oh, when this scenario happens that leads me to bark, I have another option or something else that I can do instead, or maybe even on top of. But there's no way to really remove a behavior from one day to the next, no matter how skilled you are. It's a gradual thing to modify behavior. So I want to look into, yes, what kind of activities can I have my dog do instead of barking? And that's something, especially if it's something they enjoy. So for example, when the doorbell goes off, and this is something you can practice without people coming through the door. You want to practice this when the scenarios aren't actually happening in real time. You want to practice this outside of that. That way it's going to be a lot less meaningful and a lot less difficult for you and your dog. So what you want to do is pretend to ring the doorbell or just knock on the door. After you do, guide your dog to find a ball, or guide your dog to their bed, or guide your dog to go find a treat. What's going to end up happening is you're conditioning your dog that whenever they hear that knock or whenever they hear the doorbell, it means something fun is happening. We don't want to do something as simple and easy as asking them to sit, although that can still be enjoyable. There's probably other activities that, comparing to the excitement and the thrill, or just the overall stimulation of the door or somebody coming to the door, we want to make sure that we have something that's going to be seen in your dog's eyes as higher value than caring about what's going on, because your dog's going to have to learn that there's a new behavior that pays off more, but that behavior also has to encourage them to leave the other behavior behind. And so if we have a dog that wants to bark at the door, I would look into whether that dog is into balls, fetch, what they like doing, so then I can exchange the behavior of barking, I can replace it with the behavior of fetching or something else. And we might still get some barks at first, but if we get 1 to 2 barks, it's better than if we get that as opposed to 10 to 20 barks. So we want to, of course, start gradually and be realistic about it. But the more we practice this consistently, and again, we want to do this without having the actual real life stimulus happening. We want to practice when there's not much going on. Eventually, we're going to get a dog that chooses that new behavior more often than not, as opposed to the previous one, because then this new behavior is more rewarding, naturally feels good, you and your dog enjoy it more, and so there's no reason for your dog to not feel as though that's a better thing to do in response to that stimulus. So that's definitely where I would go with the excessive barking. Potty training, my main key or my main solution for that is to log your puppy's accidents or bathroom breaks. That way you really get to know the bowel, you really get to know what they can handle, and you also want to log that according to the amount of water that they drink. If they drink a lot, that's okay. Just make sure that you log when they drink 2 cups or 3 cups or whatever. This is how often they feel the need to have their bladder be released. So that's super important. So that's gonna let you have a bit of a predictable pattern, whether that's an hour, every hour and 45, whatever it is. Each dog is different, but that's gonna allow you to then be able to predict when your puppy may need a bathroom break. And then the key is to take them out right before then. And once you do, you start preventing those accidents, you start limiting the behavior, which is being inside or having accidents inside, as much as possible. And once that happens, you can start growing that increment of time. If your puppy has they need to pee every hour and 45, you take them out every hour and 30. And then once that's something that you've got down quite well, then you take them out and not every hour and 40, every hour and 45, every hour and 50, every 2 hours, and so on, so that you can really start strengthening that bladder and really get your puppy to understand that those accidents or the habit of peeing really only happens, at least for the most of the time. You're still gonna have accidents with puppies, and that's okay. Just take them out once they do, if ever they do have an accident, so that you can build on a good behavior. You can build on a good habit that you are working more so on building by preventing the unwanted habit, as opposed to just reacting to when they do have accidents. You could use a bell system for this, but I rather just use the log system, where you know what their bladder can handle and taking them out accordingly. With the bell system, although it's practical, it's very convenient, especially if we're very busy, it can be something that, especially for energetic dogs, it can be a way for them to simply seek attention. Sometimes it might be for a bathroom break, sometimes it may not be, so that's where there can be a little bit of confusion. And I very much rather, especially with a puppy, I much rather have them learn that if they wait, they get what they need. If they wait, they get what they want. And obviously it's on us to know when and how they need something, as opposed to the bell serving as a tool that they use to prompt us. I'd rather be the one to let them know, hey, I know that you need this, so let's go get it. I know that you need that, I know when to go and get it for you. And that's really something that can be very beneficial for them as they get older. They can learn that patience, waiting, just waiting for you to let them know that they can do something, or them waiting for you as far as you know when they need something, can be very, very, very fruitful, as opposed to them feeling they need to prompt you by pulling, barking, jumping. These are also ways that dogs can communicate instead of practicing patience, instead of practicing waiting, just because doing that has never really panned out for them. They've learned that they need to prompt, bite, nip, chew, bark, jump, do all these things to get something to happen. The last one, yes, it's about pulling on the leash. So again, that could be due to a number of different things. I work with dogs that will pull because they want to leave that environment. I work with dogs that will pull because they're afraid of that environment. I work with dogs that pull because there's really no connection between the handler and the dog, so there's no reason for them to even provide engagement to the handler. I also work with dogs that will pull just because they have so much energy, and once you get that out of them, they feel no need to pull. So pulling always fulfills some kind of need. It is another way that a dog can communicate to you how they're feeling, and it's important for us to figure out why. And for example, if I was to just go through one instance where we have a dog that is pulling out of fearfulness, so meaning they just want to get out of wherever they are because it's something that they just can't handle in that moment. So what I would do is really evaluate or assess whether that environment is one that we can avoid, or one that we can prevent and maybe switch to a different environment, or maybe avoid that environment altogether and work in easier settings where there's less likely to be the need to pull. And then that's definitely where I want to work on, and then build the confidence, build the skills, the more positive feelings that will make it so my dog, instead of pulling, will maybe check in on me. Instead of pulling, they'll walk next to me. Instead of pulling, maybe they'll walk behind me, or it's just something else that's different than the pulling that I can then focus on reinforcing. But if that's the case of a dog pulling out of fear or anxiety, I want to really look at the environments to then get a different kind of feeling or different response from them, and really take it from there.